behalf of His Excellency the President. He was scheduled to be in this meeting. As you know, he has attended these meetings before. He has participated robustly in many of the deliberations, and he has implemented some of the recommendations that have been made subsequent to this meeting. In fact, some of our policy initiatives have emanated from the recommendations that were made by the Pastoralist Leaders Forum. And before I read His Excellency's statement, I have a written statement and I have some of my thoughts which are not written. I want to beg your indulgence to first of all read this written statement. I will make some general statements as a pastoralist myself, and then I will read His Excellency's statement. An old expression, ladies and gentlemen, that was common profiled the arid and semi-arid areas of Kenya outside our republic. And therefore, there used to be the notion that when you come from pastoralist Kenya to Nairobi or any other part of Kenya, you came from somewhere to Kenya. As you are aware, progressively, there is the greater realization that every part of pastoralist Kenya is actually Kenya. There was a certain cruel truth to this uncomfortable expression. In territorial terms, ASAL regions fall within the map of Kenya. However, in socio-economic terms, there were two realities that were starkly different. The differences went beyond inevitable natural and cultural diversity and strongly hinted at problems of inclusion, equity, and justice. We have come far since those times. Everyone now recognizes that ASAL and pastoral Kenya, just like the rest of the country, has immense potential and great opportunities. We know that the Kenyan dream is very much alive in the pastoral rangeland, just as it is in the sprawling urban settlements and the forested highlands. The climatic and geographical characteristics of pastoral homelands are distinct and exert unique influence on how people lead their lives. The distribution and seasonality of many resources intensifies demand and escalates pressure between users. This leads to uncertainty, conflict, insecurity, displacement, then poverty. The values underpinning our constitutional dispensation have provided the opportunity and imperative to deliver inclusion through devolution as a matter of justice. The Constitution has therefore given structures and a viable framework for us to reposition arid and semi-arid lands and to reposition pastoral communities in our nation. Apart from recognizing our shared destiny as a united Kenya, it is now recognized that the unique drivers of conflict must be understood and addressed collaboratively in order to reduce intra- and inter-community conflict and to counter violent extremism. Registering community land will become less difficult if we collaborate in interrogating the drivers of complexity and misunderstanding, as well as other difficulties. Similarly, justice is strongly connected with opportunity. How do we make sure that the Equalization Fund works for arid and semi-arid and pastoral communities? What difficulties are inherent to the legal framework, and which are the result of implementation challenges? To what extent are the necessary changes connected with the Constitution? It is important to know that equity and justice in allocation of national resources depends on availability of sound population statistics. I want to ask you, as leaders in the pastoral community, we will be having census coming our way shortly. It is no longer tenable, my friends, it is no longer tenable to say we move from one corner to another. We move from one country to another. We live in mountains. We sometimes shift from here to there. We have a national census. We must go out of our way, think outside the box to ensure that every pastoralist is enumerated, because on the basis of those numbers, resource allocation and many other things will have a bearing. And therefore, I want to persuade you as leaders in the pastoralist areas, my good people, there should not be pointing fingers, there should not be blame game, there should not be excuses, there should not be any reason. We must be at the table to make sure that the right instruments are put in place, the right mechanisms are implemented, and every pastoralist and every Kenyan be enumerated. As I have said, the repositioning of ASAL Kenya and pastoral communities has unlocked tremendous potential from these regions. Albert Einstein once said that if you judge a fish by its ability to climb a tree, you will forever think it is stupid. Similarly, if you judge ASAL areas according to its potential to produce stable yields of other regions, you will make the tragic mistake of seeing it as a low potential, highly problematic region. We are not making that mistake. ASAL and pastoral communities are too important to be profiled casually and without due consideration. 80% of Kenya is ASAL. It is regrettable, even suicidal, to neglect pastoralists and its development promise. The livestock value chain will in a very short time form the pillar of Kenya's competitive advantage. Similarly, honey farming and the opportunities in flora that thrive in ASAL areas are among the value chains that can raise household incomes significantly and seriously boost national productivity. I have not mentioned the extractive potential of arid and semi-arid regions. It is one opportunity that can enable us accelerate development in arid and semi-arid areas and communities living therein in tandem with the national development. Emerging issues in important sectors like the provision of health, education, and livestock sectors must be resolved in the spirit of collaboration and consultation with determination to expand opportunities, deepen inclusion, and equity. Water is life. A lot of the issues that we must address with the pastoralists are directly linked to availability of and access to water. How we manage water resources is a critical and will reflect on our attitude to parts of Kenya crying out for inclusion as a matter of right. 80% of Kenya is ASAL, let me repeat. This means that Kenya is water scarce, and that is, in per capita terms, we are significantly water stressed. Programs to improve access to water are existential issues for many Kenyans. Investments to expand availability of water are also about reducing water stress and realizing socioeconomic equity. And I will speak to that in a while. How we manage such initiatives, therefore, is very, and I dare say, very important in terms of how we relate to the idea of inclusion of communities who occupy and live of 80% of Kenya's land mass in our arid and semi-arid areas. And I have made this statement fully realizing where we are. And I want to speak to three things. Since I am speaking to the leadership of 80% of Kenya, which is arid and semi-arid areas and communities that live in there. Issue number one, which I have discussed with many governors, I have discussed with many members of parliament, I have discussed with many senators from this region, is matters education. Matters education. At the moment, as the government of Kenya, we have made two steps. Number one, we have made it mandatory for every child to go to school. We have made it mandatory for every child to go to Standard 1. Compulsory free primary education. We have stepped it up to compulsory free day secondary school. I have discussed transition rates with many leaders from this region. We still have a very serious challenge of transition from primary to secondary in arid and semi-arid areas. I want to persuade the leadership of our pastoral communities that part of the equality we are looking for and the greatest empowerment we can give to any society is the empowerment through education. I want us to spare no effort